All right, welcome to my channel. Of course, this is Musjaro, and of course, how we used to do it in this particular channel, trying to look at some points, basic points, and of course, analyzing some questions for those persons that are writing the UTME or WAEC 2026 examination. This particular lecture series is obviously for you. Now, if you have been following me, you notice that I did drop a particular video on atomic chemistry. If you know you have not watched the video, do well to check my channel, of course, and of course, watch the video. Please do well as you do watch the video, do well to share, do well to subscribe, and of course, do well to make your comments of topics that you want Mojaro to trash. Now, I have a simple question from atomic aspect of chemistry or basic chemistry, what I call the basic chemistry in my effective compendium. Now, this particular question is actually coming from the effective compendium for those of us that are writing UTME or the WAEC examination. Do well to have a copy of this particular book. So if you want a copy, do well to send me a message or drop a comment. You can get to see this book in bookshop, and of course I can deliver it to you anywhere you are in Nigeria. So quickly, let's look at this question. Now, this question is actually looking at the periodic table. Now the question says, which of the following physical properties decreases down a group in the periodic table? Now remember, as we usually do, we try to analyze each terminology used in a particular question so they get to understand it properly, and of course make the video so very short, straight to the point. That's how Mojaro does his things. Now, talking about the periodic table, you must know that the periodic table obviously is divided into what? Into groups, and of course periods, and of course the groups are the columns, while the periods, of course, are the rows. That means automatically I can say that the periodic table is divided into rows and columns, where the rows are the periods, while the columns are the what? Groups. Now, there are some physical properties that tend to affect elements in the periodic table. Now, there are some that if I'm moving from left to right in the periodic table, they tend to increase, and of course decreases from top to bottom. That means decreases down the group. Now, what are these properties? Now, I'll try and list them in a very simple way for you to understand. First off, now if you look at these physical properties, we're having ionization energy. Of course, this IEM means ionization energy. I want to make it so brief and short as possible. Now we have electron affinity. This EA stands for electron affinity. Then of course we have electron negativity. Now these three properties, they are not the same, but they have the same variation with the periodic table. That is to say, what am I trying to say in this case? That if I move from left to right of the periodic table, they tend to do what? They tend to increase, but from top to bottom, they tend to decrease. But there are some properties that decrease from left to right. Now, what are those properties that decrease from left to right? We have what? Atomic radius. We have electro what? Positivity. They tend to what? Decrease from left to right, but increase from top to bottom. Now, if we have understood that, then we can be able to trash this question. Now, they said, which of the following physical properties decreases down a group? Now, for it to decrease down a group, that means for it to decrease from top to bottom, that means the property will increase from left to right. That is to say, across the period. Now, these are the properties that increases from left to right, but decreases down a group. Now, look at this options. You can see here that the answer is what? Is electron negativity. Now this electron negativity, you need to know it. What is electron negativity? Is the tendency or ability of an element to do what? To attract electrons. Now this electron negativity is used to predict type of bond. Let me just bring out some points, and of course used to predict the polarity of a what? Of a molecule. Used to predict type of bond, and of course the polarity of a molecule. So you have to be very careful. Now we have succeeded in looking at the answer to this particular question, knowing what is electronegativity, knowing what it affects, and knowing the variation it has with the periodic table, and of course knowing the other properties that have same variation as electron what? Negativity. Now, another thing that we must put at the back of our mind again is that, look at this question number 2. They said, how many unpaired electrons are there in the nitrogen sub level? Now, for us to be able to attempt this question, we have to be very careful and very smart. Now, how do we do that? You should know the sub levels that they're talking about. Now, what are the sub levels? Talking about the sub shells, talking about the X, P, D. F. Now you should know that these are sub-levels or subshells, that this S has one orbital, this P has three, this D has five, while F has 7. That an orbital carries a maximum of what? Of 2 electrons. That is to say, because S has one orbital, that means it can carry a maximum of 2 electrons. P can carry a maximum of what? Of 6 electrons. D can carry a maximum of 10. F can carry a maximum of what? Of 14 electrons. Now, coming back to nitrogen, you know that nitrogen is what? Is 7. The atomic number is 7. And what's atomic number? Atomic number is the number of protons. And because it's a neutral element, the number of protons obviously is equal to the number of electrons. So the question says, how many unpaired electrons are there in the nitrogen submolecules? Now, for me to do it, I need to use the XPDF configuration to get nitrogen. How do I do that? That's why I said you have to watch the atomic chemistry aspect of a particular video I uploaded so that you're able to follow up, but still you can still understand from what I'm trying to say. Now, because solution is 7, doing the XPDF configuration, 1x2, 2x2, that is 4, then 2p what? 3. Now, this is the configuration of what? Of nitrogen. Now, this sub-level P, remember it has 3 orbitals. Now, X has 1. So if I want to arrange it in a block configuration, of course, arranging the electrons, there's a law that says the electron should be arranged in opposite direction. That is what? The Pauli exclusion principles. Now, remember, this video is all about using one question to target so many points. There are 3 laws that governs electronic configuration. And what are the 3 laws? Number 1, we have the what? The Pauli exclusion principle. Number 2, we have the what? The Ohm's rule of orbital multiplicity. Then number 3, we have the what? The Hubble what? The Hubble rule. Now, this rule says that electrons should be arranged in a brief form, summarized with arranged in opposite direction. Now we have this other one, X has what? 1 orbital 2. Then when it gets to P, we'll now apply the what? The Ohm's rule. Now Ohm's rule only applies to degenerate orbitals. Now these orbitals or levels are known as degenerate orbitals. They tend to exhibit degeneracy. Now what's that degeneracy? That means they exhibit multiplicity. That means they have multiple orbitals. Now P has 3, D has 5, F has what? 7. So this Ohm's rule only applies to degenerate orbitals. And what's the rule? He said in filling a degenerate orbital, the orbital should be partially filled before complete filling. So as P is having 3 orbitals, or if I want to arrange these 3 electrons, I can't arrange it like this. No, I'll be wrong. What I will do is I'll first of all partially fill it. So 1, 2, 3. Now there's no other electron left. At the beam there is other electron before I will now what? Pair. So from what we have done thus far, you can answer the question: how many unpaired electrons are there in the nitrogen sublevels? Of course, there are 3 unpaired electrons. Now, the presence of unpaired electrons confers a property on the atom or element. And what's that? It confers the property of what? Of paramagnetism. That is to say, elements that have 1 or more unpaired electrons are said to be what? Said to be paramagnetic. While those ones that do not have unpaired electrons are said to be what? Diamagnetic. Now, we have diamagnetic and we have what? We have paramagnetic. There's another phenomenon which is ferromagnetism, which is usually exhibited by transition what? Elements. Now, we have started looking at the answer to these 2 questions, trying to bring out some points surrounding these questions. So it's not about bringing out the questions or bringing out the answer, rather, is to look at the points on that you can get from these questions. In case questions like this gets repeated, you get to answer it. That's what the page or this channel is all about. Straight to the point, and of course, getting or bringing my analysis out. Now, these questions was gotten from the effective compendium. Now, this is the effective compendium. So this book is all about looking at some important points, not just the points, and of course looking at questions on each chapter. So if you want to get this book, of course, the effective compendium, you can get it in any bookshop, or of course, or you can get it from me by sending me a DM or sending a comment on the comment section so that you can get a copy for yourself. You are preparing for UTME or SSCE or entrance nursing or even GCE examination. This book is highly recommended. Of course, I'm the author, Mosjaro. So of course, I'll see you in other videos on atomic chemistry. So the first thing you need to know is knowing the basic of chemistry first before you get to look at other aspects. So we'll be dropping the videos step by step. So I'll see you in my other videos. Do well to subscribe, and of course do well to share after watching the video. Thank you very much.